pray. Everybody said? You ever get obsessed with something and it just takes over every aspect of your life? Like, for example, and please forgive me, but this is like the most recent one I can think of, and I know it's not as cool anymore, but do you remember when like Fortnite was at its highest level? Like, where it's like you couldn't go anywhere. Like, I would literally, like, up here, I would do an intro, and I'd be like, all right, so what's your favorite food? And there'd always be one sixth grade boy who's like, Fortnite, right? Give me a big pot and a med kit, right? Like, you're like, dude, what are you talking, like, and it just and then suddenly you have, like, the toys, and you have videos, and you're watching YouTube. Like, who's had something, not necessarily Fortnite, but who's had something like that? You get obsessed, and it just takes over your life. You get so obsessed. Right? Some people are just like obsessed with Taylor Swift. Some people are obsessed with their favorite sports team. Maybe it's a movie, a TV show. So I feel like it was probably 7 years ago, so you guys were young. But there was this thing that was going around. It still exists today, and some people still play it, but it blew up. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It was an app. It rhymes with Pokemon Low. Pokemon Go. Who's heard of Pokemon Go? Okay, all right, so you guys are with me. So listen, right, so Pokemon Go, it blew up. It's this augmented reality app where it literally has like a regular map. I don't even know what it does anymore, but this was back then, where you could go around and you could catch Pokemon. And then you could battle other trainers, and then different like landmarks in the city would be different like gyms you'd go to, and you'd try to, and guys, when I say it like took over, like the Pokemon Go was big the first year we ever did YE. And one of the free time activities is we literally drove the Calvary tram around property trying to catch Pokemon. This is how big it was. Pokemon Go was at YE, but people were obsessed. They would go to crazy places. They would put themselves in positions they shouldn't be in. There was a guy who walked onto like a military base illegally trying to catch a Pikachu or something. I don't even know what Pokemon it was. But like, it took over people's lives that they were just wandering around with their head down, not knowing what they were doing. And like their whole life was Pokemon Go. Listen, I found a couple interesting stories. Pokemon Go player crashes into cop car. A man from Baltimore was zooming down the street in his car and accidentally crashed into a parked cop car. Apparently, it was because he was too busy staring down at the game on his phone, which he admitted quickly to the cops standing nearby. Unfortunately for him, it also all was caught on camera. Can you imagine? Officer, you don't understand. There was an Eevee. I really wanted it. It was a Charmander. Char. Oh, it's a Charmander. Oh, no problem. You hit us. We'll let you off this time. At least you didn't say it was a Pidgey. That would have been bad. A woman from New Jersey was reportedly playing Pokemon Go in a cemetery and somehow ended up stuck in a tree. Unable to get back down, she had to phone 911 to come and rescue her. How do you explain that? All right, ma'am, I'm sure there's a logical explanation. Oh, officer, you see, I was coming to the cemetery, to visit a lost loved one. No. There was a Voltorb. Right? I don't know, throw out what and then she climbed a tree. Why are you climbing a tree? It doesn't, all right, a couple more. Pokemon Go can be incredibly engrossing, especially for two guys from California. The two were so distracted while playing the game that they fell off a cliff of between 75 to 100 feet. Both of them received injuries from their falls. Can you imagine? I just don't, it's like, I choose you! Right? That's definitely, they went from being a normal type to a ghost type, right? Like that. And then here's my favorite. During the huge Pokemon Go craze, and I'll just end with this thought, is people started naming their babies after Pokemon. Like, can you imagine? Oh, here's your son. Oh, thank you. Oh, I love you, Jigglypuff. Oh, little Poofy Puff. Oh. Does he grow up and evolve into Wigglytuff? How does it work? Ooh, now you're a little Wigglytuff. Woo! Like, but you become so obsessed with something. And and you guys are laughing because you can somewhat relate, maybe not to Pokemon Go, but to another area of your life. For me, it used to be the Miami Hurricanes football team. I would literally, I'm not joking, I would get depressed when I was younger and they'd lose. Like, people wouldn't talk. My mom came home one time after they lost on a last-second field goal, and she walked in and she's like, "Are you okay?" Because I was so obsessed. Like, the Hurricane football team had taken over my life when I was younger. Like, I was just so in on it. And in all these ways, it's a weird thing, it's a bad thing, it's a negative connotation, but we allow these things to take over our life. But the only thing that will ever truly make a difference and change us, for some reason, we don't let that take over our life, and that's our faith. That's this thing called Christianity. That's this thing called the gospel. We have the greatest power in the world, the greatest gift that God has ever given us. Yet for some reason, we're like, I choose you, Pikachu, right? You know, I'm so obsessed with this artist, this singer, this actor, this streamer, this YouTube personality, this influencer. Like, I love them. And they just released a new video, and I can't wait to see this new video. I can't wait to read the next book. Oh my gosh, when Harry Potter was big and the next book would come out and people would line up to buy it and to read it, and they would read it in one sitting, and yet we find it hard to read a chapter of our Bible a day. Like, can you imagine what the world would look like if we let the Bible and let our faith and let Christianity take over our lives? Instead of reading articles about this, we'd be reading articles about how the world has changed for the better. 2 crazy Christians go into a neighborhood and clean it up. Right? Whoa, what an article. What a headline. Like, can you imagine if we allowed Christianity to take over every aspect of our lives? In Colossians chapter 3, the second half, verse 18, Paul is bringing us into, first of 4 points, is bringing us into the home. Is bringing us into the household, because I truly believe with everything in me that the society, the city, the state, the country, the world around us changing starts in our homes. It starts by what happens at home. And if we will allow our faith to take over these different aspects of our life that we'll talk about, the first one being home, you're going to see a crazy difference in not just your life, but in the world around you. It's verse 18. You guys are going to be like, where are you going with this? Wives, submit yourself to your husbands, as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. So what's happening here? Paul is giving us the model of what our homes should look like and what family should look like. You see, in those days, women and children were as good as basically, and we're going to talk about it next, basically almost slaves, almost property. They didn't really have rights. They didn't really have authority. They were inferior, actually. So Paul starts this off, and he starts it off in an interesting way. He says, wives, submit to your husbands. But he's bringing to mind the importance of wives and children, because what's happening is women and children are getting saved. And there's something that's starting to happen in homes all around the area, and he's trying to give us this model of here's what a home should look like, because our homes should be changed by Jesus. And I think you guys would agree, whether it's your own home or whether it's a friend, someone in schools, just someone that you know, maybe someone on your street, that our homes today that we look at, there's something really wrong in a lot of them. There are more broken homes than there are homes where mom and dad are both in the picture. There's more single-parent homes. There's more homes where dad has left. There's more homes where mom's not there. There's more homes where parents are divorced. There's more homes where there's only one parent or no parents involved than there are where it's the way God has intended it to be. We've all seen this, right? How many of you know someone or are yourself in a broken home in some way, shape, or form? Right? It's taking over the world. And Paul doesn't want this to happen, and this rings true today too, because this isn't what we want, and this wasn't God's plan. But it's crazy. We actually see in 2 Timothy 3, we don't have to turn there, but these broken homes are actually a sign of the end times. That Jesus is coming back. The more and more brokenness we see in the world, the closer and closer we are to Jesus coming back. But we can still make a difference. We can still do something about it. Because as I said, as the home goes, so goes society and the nation. So what does God do? He starts to put things into order. And we talked about this in our 1 Corinthians series. So he gives the chain of command. Why? It's really important because if no one's in charge, everyone's in charge, and it creates chaos. Right? We need rules, right? Who would agree with that? Some of you are like, no, we don't want rules, right? Without rules, it's chaos. It's anarchy. It's just absolute insanity. But I want to be clear, when Paul says these things, he's not saying husbands are better than wives. That guy's going to be single for a long time. He's not saying husbands are more important. And when he's saying wives submit, he's not saying in all of society women submit to men. Because the Bible makes it very clear, this is in the home and this is in the church. This is not the workplace. This isn't just regular day-to-day life. Girls, no man can just come up to you in Publix and tell you to do something and you have to listen. That's not what the Bible says. And he makes it clear when he gives commands to husbands as well how this is supposed to look. But so he gives this chain of command, says, wives, submit to your husbands. But then he says, as is fitting, as it is fitting in the Lord. So what's he saying? He's not even saying do this because your husband deserves it. But he's saying do this because it honors God. It's not about your husband, it's about God. And I want to stop for a second and say this, because I know you guys are 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and you're like, okay, why are we talking about wives and husbands? Because one day you're going to be one, all right? And I hope you learn this stuff now, and so that when you are a wife or a husband, you know the model that God has. But two, some of you come from broken homes. Some of you have a place where this isn't modeled for you. And what typically happens is if you come from a broken home, you will create a broken home when you grow up. That's the cycle. That's what statistics tell us, and that's what the world tells us that's going to happen. Right? If you're a kid who comes from a teenage pregnancy, statistics say you're more likely to be a pregnant teenager one day yourself. That's what statistics will tell you. And it creates this false narrative that you are doomed to repeat what your parents have done. But my hope and prayer is when you read God's plan for the home, you'll look on and say, that's not going to be me. And that decision starts today. Every decision you make leading up to that point is going to affect how you view this and how you act in this when you grow up. So if you let Jesus take over your life, you let the gospel take over your life, you become obsessed with Jesus, you'll break these chains. You'll break this cycle. So that's why I'm telling you this now. I know you all aren't going to be married for 10, 15, 50 years. He doesn't even know I just made fun of him. Right? But every decision you make leading up to that point is so important. So he says, wives, do this as is fitting to the Lord. But then he says this, husbands, love your wives. Love your wives. It's this word agape. It's this unconditional love. Now, some guys marry women that are hard to love. I didn't. My wife is perfect. She's here. I have to say that. I love you, babe. Ooh, she's perfect. She's just amazing. I'm just so lucky she has me. Just kidding. No, but husbands, love your wives. So listen, girls, one day when you get married, marry a man who's going to agape love you unconditionally. It's not based on what you do for them. It's not based on how clean you keep the house. It's not based on how good of a cook you are. It's not based on how you dress, how you look. They love you because of you. And that's it. And here's the thing, girls, it's going to be easy to submit to a man that loves you. Not a man that says, hey, baby, I love you. Come on, you know I do. No, make him show you that he loves you. Husbands, love your wives. And she doesn't earn it, she gets it. And listen, it says this, and do not be harsh. Other translations would say, don't be bitter toward. This would imply that the husbands in Colossae have wives that have done things that could make them bitter. But it doesn't matter. The book of Ephesians tells us, hey, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Well, what did Jesus do for the church? He died for the church. He put us completely above himself. So every boy in the room right now, look up, eyes up here, look at me really quick. This is one of the most important things you'll ever hear. And if you can let this stick in your heart and your mind, you're going to make an amazing husband one day. I don't care how good or bad of a job your own dad did as a husband. Even if your dad's not even in the picture, that doesn't have to be you. But ready, this is important, and let it stick with you. The life of a Christian husband is not fair. No, don't clap. Stop. Don't clap. That's just being stupid right now. No, seriously, hold on to this. Because Satan's going to whisper stuff in your mind. He's going to tell you, I deserve. Well, she did this. Well, she didn't do this. Well, dinner wasn't ready when I got home. Well, this didn't happen. I'm doing this. And you're going to start to have these thoughts in your head. Love your wives as Christ loved the church. Can I ask you a question? When Jesus died on the cross for us, was that fair to him? No. So who are we to complain about not fair? Boys, prepare now. Be ready now. Be ready now. It's not fair. But it's how God called us to be men, to lead, and to love. And if you truly love her and you love the Lord, she's going to find it easy to submit. Now, the next part's for you guys now in the stage of life here. And it says, children, obey your parents. I don't have to go into many details. As long as they're not asking you to sin. I don't care how ridiculous the request is. As long as they're not asking you to sin, this is a command. This is a command from the Lord. Children, obey your parents. If you are obsessed with Jesus and the gospel and you've allowed it to take over your life, you're going to listen to your parents. And I love what Paul says about it. He says it pleases the Lord. You might not like your parents sometimes, and you might not like what they ask you to do, but it pleases God when you listen to them. And what happens is we see a breakdown in respect for authority in society today. I believe it starts in the home where we've lost respect for the authority of our parents. And God calls us to obey our parents. And when we can have respect for authority in the home, what happens is now you start to have respect for your teachers, you start to have respect for other adults, you start to have respect for the police, for firefighters, you start to have respect for these people above you. Because in the home, where you've let the gospel take over your life, you've been influenced, and it pleases the Lord. And here's what happens, though, all the time, and I don't want to put this completely on you, but you guys ever hear people say something like, kids these days? You guys ever hear that? Isn't that annoying? Guys, can I tell you this? First, I want to apologize from us old people, because it's not fair to say that. And I read this quote, and I want to share it with you guys. It won't be on the screen, but kids these days don't create the problems, they reveal them. Kids these days don't create the problems, they reveal them. You know why there's issues in your age group today? It's because the generation before you or your parents and people my age, we failed. I'm just being honest. That's why there's issues. So have grace on your parents. Have grace on authority. But you're still called to obey this authority. And then it says, fathers, verse 21, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. Listen, children, obey your parents. Your parents, and this isn't a knock on them. I already apologized, and this isn't me like saying it. I don't want you to go home and be like, Pastor Sean said you need to do this. But as parents, we're supposed to make it easy to obey us because of the love we show, because of the requests we make. We're not supposed to discourage you. And I know a lot of you have probably been discouraged. And I don't know what your life is like at home, but no, that's not the model God has. That's not the plan God has. Parents aren't called to irritate or make unreasonable demands of you guys because it discourages you, and some of you already are. So I want to say I'm sorry, but at the same time, I do want to challenge you, be different. When you're a parent one day, when you're a husband one day, when you're a wife one day, be different. Be the parent you wanted. Be the husband you wish your dad would have been. Be the wife you wish your mom would have been. And if they are good at it, look at that as a model to follow. But when we let Jesus take over our home, you guys good there? Chatting in the middle row? Can you guys just put like a gap between some of y'all? Just put scoot one seat over. There we go. And when we let Jesus take over our homes, what's going to happen next? It sounds crazy here, but listen, verse 22. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything. And do it, not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven. So when we let the gospel take over our lives, and what happens is it starts to change our home. But then what will happen is it'll start to change our community too. That's the second place. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world am I getting this from this? Because this is a weird command, and some of you all might read this, and this verse has been abused by people for years to say slavery is okay because the Bible talks about slavery. No, that's not what these verses are saying. But in these days and these times, I will say slavery was as normal as breathing. Everyone had slaves, and slaves were all different colors of people too. This wasn't just one race enslaving another race. This was all kinds of people. Everyone had slaves. Not literally everyone, but tons of people. It was normal. It was a completely normal way of life. But this is hard for us to relate to these days, but the way you can look at it very different is in the place you are, in the place where you're at. If you guys were adults right now, I'd say in the workplace. But as students right now, I would say, look at this and almost replace the word slaves with school. Students. Replace masters with teachers. Look at this in the context of where we are. Because Paul, as he talks about slavery right here, I want you guys to understand too, the role of the church was not to get involved in social action. It was to spread the gospel. And Paul's hope and Paul's prayer was by the gospel being spread. His hope was that the love of Christ would change the hearts of slaves and their masters. Because he knew it wasn't just about social reform. It wasn't about what the government could do for the people. But he knew that if he could win people for Jesus and the gospel could change their heart, then it would change their community around them. So he's encouraging slaves right now to show the love of Jesus to their masters. For you guys as students, show the love of Jesus to the other people in your classroom, to your teachers, to your principal, to your administrators, to the lady, the cafeteria lady, to the janitor. Right? We show the love of Jesus to the people around us. Verse 23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Be the best student you can be. Be the best worker you can be. We live in a world where people just want to skate by. We live in a world now where people are lazy. My stepdad owns an above-ground pool business. He builds and installs and repairs above-ground pools, and he's literally trying to not have to do it anymore because he's older. It's a lot of physical labor, and he literally can't find a good worker. He can't find someone to help hand this business to. He can't find someone to come who wants to work hard, who wants to get their hands dirty, because people have become so lazy. People don't want to work, and people don't want to put in effort, and everyone wants to just become a famous influencer so they can get their million YouTube views and get a check, but that doesn't happen for everyone. We want to make as much money as possible with as little effort as possible. That's the world we live in today, but Paul is saying, as Christians, we are called to do the best that we can possibly do, because we're not working for man, we're working for Jesus. Ultimately, you work for Jesus. And what I love is he says you'll get an inheritance. He says you will receive an inheritance. It's funny, he's telling this to slaves who they didn't get an inheritance. When their master died, they didn't get anything. But he's saying you have a reward in heaven. You have an inheritance in heaven. And what's crazy is Paul, he didn't condemn slavery, but he wanted slaves' hearts to be changed. And what actually is going to happen is the structure of slavery in the Roman Empire is going to crumble after this. And I believe the gospel played a role in this happening. Because they became so obsessed with Jesus in their homes that now it spread into their community and it led to the fall of something that was horrific. So what do? I've got 2 things for you. Verse 2, chapter 4. Devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. And pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should. First thing, it's prayer, but what do I mean? It's we allow Jesus to take over our homes, we allow Jesus to take over our community, but then we also get so obsessed with him, he literally takes over privately. He takes over our private life. Call it the backstage sometime. I've sat through this thing where they talk about pastors having their front stage persona, but what their backstage life looks like, and that's what's the most important. Who are you in private? Paul says in private, you should devote yourselves to prayer. This word devote, do you guys know what devote means? Does it mean you just do it every once in a while? If I devote myself to the game of basketball, does that mean I shoot a ball once a week? No, that means I'm waking up early, I'm running, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the court, I'm shooting, I'm practicing, I'm running, I'm doing sprints, I'm doing mic and layups, I've got a shooting machine, I get someone to go out there and do rebounds for me. I'm literally devoting myself to the game of basketball. I'm devoting myself to Pokemon Go. I'm going to cemeteries and climbing trees and falling off cliffs. Like, I'm devoting myself to this. Y'all can think of something you've devoted yourself to. But have you devoted yourself to prayer? And I'm going to stand up here and just be honest with you guys and say that is so hard for me. I'm so bad at it. I'm good at reading my Bible. I'm decent. Not great. I'm good. But I'm not the best at devoting myself to prayer. I don't spend as much time in prayer as I should. This challenges me. I'm telling you guys this about me because I want you to know, I fall short too. But as I'm saying this, I am challenged by this. You don't quit. You make it consistent. And I tell people this all the time, and I'm convicted by it. I don't know if my wife's still here, so she's going to call me out on it when I get home, and I'm fine with it. I always tell people, you make time for what's important to you. And if Jesus is important to you, you'll make time for him. I think we have that up on the screen. You make time for what's important to you. We make time for what's important to us. And if you want Jesus to take over your life, you're going to make time for him. He died on the cross for you and rose again, giving you way to heaven. The least we can do is be devoteful. And it says, be watchful and thankful. Not just watchful to not fall into temptation. That's how a lot of people take this, but watching for answers. And I love that they put watchful and thankful together. Do you ever pray for something and it comes true? Like what you ask for happens? Now, be honest. Keep your hand up. I want you to leave your hand up for a second. If you've prayed for something, it happened, what you asked for came true. Leave your hand up if you never went back and thanked God afterwards. Thank you guys for being honest. Think about that. God, I'm asking you for this. Please heal so-and-so. Please provide these finances. Please do this. And then he does. They're healed. It's a miracle. And you never go back and say thank you. I thank the cashier at Publix for taking my money, but I can't thank God for answering my prayer. It's the weirdest thing. Oh, that's going to be $37.42. Okay, thank you. That's my money. Why did I say? I thank them for taking from me, but I can't thank God for giving to me? We need to be thankful. Watch him answer your prayers. If you start to keep track of the prayers you pray and look for his answers and start thanking him, you're going to see something crazy. Paul is so incredible in this because he says, pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message so we may proclaim the mystery of Christ. Listen to this. Paul is writing this letter from prison. And he's telling the people to pray. Pray, pray, pray. Now, if I have this opportunity and I'm in jail and I'm writing to people and asking, I'm going to say, pray that I get out of here. Pray that someone breaks me out. Pray that they'll let me go early. But Paul doesn't say that. Paul is so serious and so obsessed about Jesus that he says, pray that the gospel will go forth. Pray that people will come to know Jesus through my chains. He's not saying take me out of here, but he's saying pray that people will come to know Jesus. He's obsessed with Jesus, and he's allowed Jesus to take over his life. And look what Paul's done. He wrote most of the New Testament. But it's not just our private life. Verse 5, be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. It's also publicly. We should allow Jesus to take over our home, take over our community. But if he takes over our private life, we'll also see that he takes over our public life. He says, be wise in the way you act. What would non-Christians say about you? Just curious. The world is very critical of Christians. Let me ask this. If you never told your friends, classmates, relatives, whoever it is that you're a Christian, would they know? I've heard it said, and I feel like it's an overused illustration, but if you were accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence in a court of law to convict you? And not just, oh yeah, they go to church once a week. That's cool. Sometimes I'm in my garage. That doesn't make me a car. I don't have a garage. That's a lie. But I'm in my dad's garage. That doesn't make me a car. It doesn't make me car cleaning supplies. It doesn't make me a lawnmower. It makes me a person in a car. Just because you go to church doesn't mean you're a Christian. Seriously, would there be enough evidence? The way you live, the way you act, the testimony of people around you. They start bringing in witnesses. Man, tell us about the time you saw Sean being a Christian. We were at this party. He was so wasted, man. And he was just like, he was going up to everyone, I love you, man. I love you, man. It was awesome. So he was drunk. Yeah. He loves people, man, when he's drunk. He's so funny. And that's why you think he's a Christian. Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, man. One time, he stubbed his toe, and he was like, oh, my God. See, he said God. He's a Christian. Is the way you act, does the way you act tell people you're a Christian? Paul says make the most of every opportunity. Listen, don't do or say anything that would make it difficult to share the gospel. If you live one way, one place, and another way, another place, people are going to call you a hypocrite, and they're not going to receive that message from you. So if you act like a complete fool in front of certain people and then try to invite them to like youth encounter, they're going to be like, seriously? You don't even believe that stuff. Yeah, I do. I go to church every week. That's not how you act. It says make the most. I love what Ephesians 5:15 and 16 says. Be very careful then how you live. Not as unwise, but as wise. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. If I told you you had 24 hours to live, you know what you would do? You would do everything you possibly could. You'd have your favorite meal. You'd probably mend a relationship that had been broken that you haven't offered forgiveness to yet. You might go play that sport you love that one more time. You might spend time with family. Like if you truly found out you had 24 hours to live, I bet you would live a little differently. And I'm not sitting here going, we don't know how much time we have. But what I'm saying is if you had 24 hours, you would make the most of it. You would get everything you could out of every second of that day. Paul says that's how we are to live, to make the most of every opportunity. And he says when we talk, we're full of grace, we're seasoned with salt. We should be as comfortable talking about Jesus as we are about sports, about video games, about Taylor Swift, about Pokemon Go, about whatever it is. the latest news thing, the latest political thing. It's funny, I see Christians on social media who are so passionate about talking about certain politics and certain things and different movements and all those things, but I don't hear them talk about Jesus. Right? That's what we should talk about. That's what we should point people to. And our words are so powerful. People say sticks and stones will break my bones, but words may never hurt me. That's the biggest lie in the world. Words stick. Words are powerful. So we want our words to be filled with grace and seasoned with salt. Don't be like Brother Micah at FAU. Who? Brother Micah. This guy, he was there. I think he still goes sometimes, but he literally goes, and when I was there, he would go out in the courtyard and he would just yell at people, "All you sinners are going to hell! Burn with the adulterers!" And just like all these things. People would come up to him and be like, "Oh, I like to go party and drink. You're going to hell, you drunkard!" That's not grace. That's not seasoned with salt. Right, as Christians, we're to talk different. We're to love on people. We're to share Christ with them. And guys, I'm telling you, be obsessed with Jesus. Be obsessed with the gospel. Be obsessed with your faith. And as it changes your life and it changes the world around you, you're not going to regret it. Jesus wants to use you. He wants to change you. He wants to make you better. He has a plan for you that's better. But we need to allow our lives to we need to allow our lives to be consumed by him. So here's what we're going to do.